Hey, Ed from Precision Gun Reviews here. And today we've got a few guns on the table and we're doing something a little different. Normally I'm here reviewing guns on the tabletop or doing some shooting videos or comparisons of different firearms for everyday carry, personal and home defense. But today I wanted to do something a little bit different, and that is talk to some of the new shooters out there. We are in an interesting situation now with the spread of the coronavirus and resulting COVID-19 respiratory disease, and people are being told to stay home, and people are out there panic buying various home goods and foods and different items. And one of the things that people are buying is firearms. We've seen a rush on local gun stores for guns and ammo. And a lot of these people, believe it or not, were previously not interested in owning guns. This is their first gun. So this might be you that I'm talking to. You might have thought that you didn't need a gun in the house, but this coronavirus came around and you thought, maybe it's a wise idea to have at least some form of protection in the home. So you went out and you went looking for a gun, and maybe you picked one up. Maybe you're home and you have your brand new Glock or Beretta or Walther or any other type of gun that you were interested in purchasing that you were sold on at the gun store. Maybe you ran into some difficulty at the gun store because your state has regulations you weren't aware of. Maybe you needed to wait 5 days. Maybe you needed to take a safety course that you certainly weren't able to do in 10 minutes. Maybe you had to go through your local police department or court system, talk to a judge, etc. These are not horrible things, but these are the things that gun owners have to deal with all the time. But they're in place for keeping guns in the hands of good guys and not bad guys, because we want our citizens, our law-abiding citizens, to be armed to protect themselves, but we don't want the bad guys to be able to go through the easy channels to get their guns. So if you were denied the opportunity to get a gun at the store, well, that's why. But even if you don't have your gun in hand, and of course if you do, one thing that you should be well aware of is how to safely handle that gun. And I recommend always reading the manual for any new pistol you get, and especially that first part. In every gun manual are the rules of safety. I have a couple right here. Here for this gun, the Walther CCCP, with all these red text rules for gun safety. Okay? Warnings, big warnings throughout the manual. This Beretta 92X operator's manual. Warnings. Basic safety rules. Okay? So we're going to go over some of them. And we can look through these books as sort of a guide. I'm not going to go in order here, but we could start with number 2 here. Always treat a firearm as if it were loaded. That's what I think is the number 1 rule. Always treat firearms as if they're loaded. That means never assume that your gun is unloaded, because the moment you assume that a gun is unloaded and it isn't, is the moment you can negligently discharge and hurt or kill yourself or someone you care about, or blow a hole in your TV. Here it is again. This is the Walther one. Always treat every firearm as if it were loaded, and as if it would fire if the trigger were pulled. So that means when I pick these guns up, I'm going to assume that there's a round in the chamber ready to be fired. If I pull this trigger, and I'm following the rules of firearm safety right now by not putting my finger on the trigger, if I were to pull the trigger, it would go bang until I check to see that the magazine is empty, and that's by pressing the magazine release and dropping the mag, and then pulling the slide back and checking the chamber. And I can see in there that there's no round in the chamber. So now I know that this gun is not loaded. But Until that point, I was treating it as if it were loaded. And I will still treat it as if it were loaded. I would still not point it at anyone. I would not do anything that was not responsible and safe. And that goes to the next rule, which is number 1 in this book. But never point a firearm at something that is not safe to shoot. And here in the Walther book, always keep your firearm pointed in a safe direction. Or, as written on another list I have over here, never ever point any firearm, loaded or unloaded, at anything you do not intend to shoot. Never let the muzzle cover anything you aren't willing to destroy. So, there you go. Don't point the gun at anyone, ever, unless you are intending to shoot them, whether the gun is loaded or not. Next, and this is a very, very big one. Very big, especially for new shooters. This is huge. When you pick up a gun, you never, I'm doing this for demonstration purposes, you never pick it up like this. Why? Your finger's on the trigger. You pick the gun up, you keep your finger off the trigger. This is where your finger lives, all the time, on the frame of the gun, until you are aiming at a target. So, let's say, now I'm pointed at my target, okay? I wouldn't hold the gun like this because this is bad form, but whatever. I'm just showing you. I'm pointing at the target. Now I put my finger on the trigger. I'm ready to shoot. When I'm done shooting, finger comes off the trigger again. Always keep your finger off the trigger until you are ready to shoot. Big rule for new firearms users, because you'll see people who are new to firearms who will do things like, and remember, we have to treat this gun as if it were loaded and check it to make sure it's not. You'll see new users having their finger on the trigger, putting a loaded magazine into the gun, and then going to rack the slide with their finger on the trigger. If they put pressure on this trigger while they let this go, and a round goes into that chamber, that fires. Or it can fire. So, again, I repeat, always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. All right, number 4, I think we're on. Always be sure of your target and what is beyond it. You will not always hit your target, and even if you do hit your target, a bullet may penetrate through your target and hit something behind it. This is especially important inside of your home. Depending on what your walls are made of, your bullet, and depending on your cartridge, your loading, your bullet could fire through whatever you're aiming at, whomever you're aiming at, into the wall, through the wall, and hit your child in the next room. It's not the most likely, but if you miss your target, it becomes way more likely. If you miss with one round and it hits the wall, it can go through that wall and keep penetrating what's on the other side, which could be a soft human who you love. So, when you're aiming, be sure of your target and what's beyond it. This is also true for target shooting. When you see people on YouTube shooting at their range, what's behind them? Usually a very large mound of earth or a wall made of concrete or stacks of tires, because they're shooting at their targets, but they are aware of what's beyond it and the stopping ability of that material. If you're shooting at your home, if you're shooting into the woods and you're hitting your paper target, that bullet goes right through the paper target, into the woods, hits someone who's out on a walk with their dog in the woods. You're liable. Always know your target and what is beyond it. The next few that I want to talk about all come into play with reading your manual. and here's a good one. This is in the Beretta manual. Know the safety features of the firearm you are using, but remember, safety devices are not a substitute for safe handling procedures. Meaning, don't rely on this safety to protect you if you treat the gun unsafely. If you handle the gun unsafely, it is inherently unsafe, regardless of what this is doing. Because you may think you had it on safety, and you are now used to treating the gun carelessly because the safety is protecting you, but let's say it brushed up against something at some point, and you think that the safety's on. Oh, I got it on safe. Bang. No good. Always know the safety features, but do not use them as a substitute for safe gun handling. Here's one that should be common sense, but sometimes isn't. Always use the proper ammunition for your firearm. This goes back to your manual and knowing how your firearm works and being knowledgeable of the tool. Do not put the wrong ammunition in your gun because it may have catastrophic results. You can end up with an explosion in your hand. You can end up pulling the trigger in a moment of self-defense and the gun not doing anything and yourself getting severely hurt or killed. So again, know everything there is to know about your firearm, read the manual, use the proper ammunition. Always use the proper ammunition. If you don't have the proper ammunition, don't try other ammunitions to see if they will fit, because you may have a 9mm handgun and be out of 9mm and decide to put .380 in your handgun because it's the exact same diameter cartridge. It's a shorter bullet. If it does chamber in your gun, it's going to sink further down into that chamber because it's a shorter overall case length, and your firing pin will hit nothing, and then the bullet will be stuck in there. It won't eject. It won't even extract. It'll be a clogged chamber. If you go to rack the slide again, you're going to shove another bullet back up behind the first bullet. Don't use the wrong ammo in your gun. Know what ammo your gun uses and abide by that. Only use the ammo for your gun. Furthermore, coming along with knowledge about your firearm, know the proper disassembly and cleaning procedure. Every gun has a different one, and we're going to get back to that in a moment. So, more of knowing how your firearm works. Read the manual. Lastly, there are so many more rules of gun safety that many of us just follow instinctively, but should not be neglected when learning how to handle your guns. The next one is be aware of the people who shouldn't have their hands on your gun, most notably children. Keep your guns safe from children. They don't necessarily know the difference, depending on their age and education, between a toy and a deadly weapon. And that happens far too many times. A child ends up picking up a gun, pulling the trigger, and there are catastrophic results. So keep your gun safe and secured away from the hands of children. Okay, so just so you don't think I'm constantly yelling at you, we're going to go through some of these guns and see some of their different operations and how to maybe manipulate them a little bit. So I'm going to pull some of these off camera so that I have a little bit more room to work. First one we have here is a Glock. This is a Glock 26, very common firearm. This is a compact model and it carries 10 rounds. It might be a good choice for those of you in restricted states, and it is perhaps the most popular firearm maker in the United States, maybe the world. This is a striker-fired pistol. This is a 9mm polymer-framed striker-fired pistol. And for the most part, they all work the same. So we're going to take a look at this. Again, making sure that that magazine is unloaded by pressing the magazine release and pulling back on the slide and seeing that there is nothing in the chamber. You can put your finger in there. There's no bullet, right? If there were a bullet, you would see the brass there. This is not a bullet. This is a snap cap. It's to protect your firing pin on guns that have problems shooting when nothing's in the chamber. Okay, so we've checked to see that it is unloaded. Now, to operate this gun, we will drop the slide, which would chamber the round. So now, pretending we have a loaded magazine and a round in the chamber, pulling the trigger makes the slide cycle, and we pull the trigger again. It's always the same pull. It has this safety lever on the trigger, as a lot of striker-fired firearms do, and that means that this gun will not fire if the top of the trigger is pulled, but if your finger is on it, it will fire. Now, to field strip, disassemble this gun for cleaning, as you would want to do if you do a lot of shooting, you're first going to make sure the gun is unloaded, again by depressing the magazine release, pulling out the magazine, and looking inside the chamber, making sure no round is in the chamber. In this case, with a Glock, you would have to pull the trigger, and then there's a similar takedown method for all Glocks and for some Walthers and the Beretta PX4 and a lot of Glock clones out there. These guns have these takedown tabs on either side, and what you're going to do is pull the gun back ever so slightly just to relieve tension, pushing forward, and then you pull down on both sides of this and let it go. And then the slide comes off. And then you have your spring, and you have your barrel. And you can go ahead and proceed to clean your firearm, which I'm not going to talk about in this video. So that's one type of gun. Here, this is a popular firearm. This is the Beretta 92X, but it's built just like the Beretta 92, also known as the M9 pistol, which was our military's standard issued sidearm for a great number of years. So this is a different type of firearm. This is a double action, single action gun. Now remember, this is still a gun that we are, as always, treating as if it were loaded. We haven't checked this one on this video yet. Nothing in the magazine and nothing in the chamber. You'll see this one has a completely different slide design where you can see the barrel the whole time. Okay, so we don't need the mag. So with this gun, you start off with it in sort of this configuration. This is your manual safety. Up on the slide, red means fire, and this is not fire. So we have a dead trigger when the safety's off, and there are a lot of guns that use a double action safety decocker mechanism like this, double action, single action. So here we are in firing mode, double action trigger pull. It pulls the trigger, it pulls that hammer back, and it releases the hammer. Now, on the second round with any double action, single action pistol, you'll have the hammer back, you'll have a trigger reset, and it won't go out as far because now you have a very, very light trigger pull from this point forward until the end of your magazine. Very light. So the double action, single action pistol it gives you the safety of a long and deliberate trigger pull on that first pull so you don't pull it by accident, but then becomes much easier to shoot with every subsequent round. Now, when you have a firearm like this, say we have a different situation here. So say you load it up, say this is a full magazine, this is just a snap cap, right? You load it, you put it around the chamber. Now you're in a very dangerous configuration here because your hammer's back, your trigger's very light. So with a gun with a manual decocker and safety, in this case you will pull this down, and now the gun is on safe. This is safe mode. I can pull that and I'm not firing that round. But you would want to push this back up so that it's ready to fire. And now we're in our double action mode again. So that is how the decocker works. It just puts the hammer down safely. And it looks like it's slamming forward, but you can see here, see that little bulb? That is what strikes the firing pin to go forward. And as we turn this, it turns up and out of the way. And only once it's out of the way does it trigger the hammer to go down. As for disassembly of a gun like this one's very unique, so it's not going to be like a lot of others, but it's a very popular firearm, so we'll look at it anyway. Of course, we're dropping the magazine, making sure the chamber is empty, okay? And then it doesn't matter where the hammer is, whether it's back or forward. But on this gun, we have a very simple mechanism. We push this button right here, we hold that down, and then we turn that down. And the slide comes right off, and then we're back at some of the same components. Spring, guide rod, and barrel. And it looks a little different because it's a totally different firing recoil mechanism. And there's that Beretta. Briefly, one other type of gun is a blowback style. This is the Walther CCP. It's still a striker fired pistol, so a lot of the same things as we looked at with the Glock apply here. It doesn't have that bladed trigger. Some guns won't, but they will have the manual safety. So if I rack this slide, now the gun is cocked, ready to fire. We see that the safety is off. This is a different safety. This is up to go on safe and down to fire, whereas the Beretta was up to fire and down to go on safe. This one shows that your striker's loaded there, so if I pull the trigger, it goes away. But if this were loaded and we were on safe, if it were cocked and we were on safe, now I pull the trigger and that nothing happens. But again, no substitute for safe gun handling. Now, this being a blowback pistol, it's a little bit different than those John Browning tilting barrel recoil designs. So in this case, we're going to do something initially to release the lockup of the slide to the frame, and in this case it's doing that, pushing that down and pulling to the side. On some other guns it might be pulling down on the trigger guard to unlock it or doing something up here. But in most cases with one of these blowback pistols, you then will, let me do this way, you then will pull back on the slide and let it go forward because the barrel remains in place as part of the gun on a blowback pistol. And you'll see this on some of the older 380 pistols like the Walther PPK or something like a Burst of Thunder. Just so many guns use the this sort of blowback design. So once you do that, now you are broken down. And then putting it back together is another story. And with this one, it's going to be very difficult to do around the camera. So those are some of the ways that you would take down a pistol to disassemble for cleaning. And hopefully you paid attention to those rules. And more importantly, you go and you read your manuals and take them to heart. And always practicing using the most important mechanism on any firearm. and that is your brain. Be safe, be smart, and be well informed. That about brings it to a close. This is Ed from Precision Gun Reviews. If you're interested in learning about particular firearms more in depth, go ahead and check out the channel, and you can view numerous reviews of different pistols that you might be considering as a personal defense or home defense weapon. So you could learn about it a little there, get a sense of what maybe you like or don't like, and then go out and proceed to get yourself a pistol in the home. Only after you are educated and you are committed to practicing safe gun handling and operation. So thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon if you want to get notifications, and as always, and especially now, stay safe out there. I just wanted to give a quick shout out and thanks to the gun store of Conway, South Carolina. They help us transfer in all of our firearms for review. And you should check out the gun store at scgunstore.com. They are a full-service guns and gear shop with an indoor range. They stock a wide selection of handguns, shotguns, suppressors, NFA items, tactical rifles, hunting rifles, and gear. They are fully stocked with all calibers of ammunition. They have gun safes, holsters, magazines. They do gunsmithing on site if you happen to be in the Conway, South Carolina area. Additionally, they hold training courses for those in the area. And they also offer a fully automatic experience in their gun range with an AR-15 or a Thompson 45 Tommy gun. They've got knives, they've got used firearms, parts, accessories, really just about anything you could think of related to firearms, home, and personal defense. I recommend you take a trip over to scgunstore.com, and no matter where you are, go to shop.scgunstore.com, where you can shop their inventory online and have it delivered right to your local FFL. That's the gun store of Conway, South Carolina. Thanks for making all the reviews that you see here on PGR possible.